status in their respective new releases categories on Amazon, and one title is preparing to be published by Beijing Education Press in China. Throughout her high school years, Ellen has consistently won national writing awards in the Scholastic Arts and Writing Contest. She will be attending Harvard this fall. And
but if everything doesn't work out, that's fine. You guys can, there's not a whole lot of stuff on this presentation, so if everything absolutely doesn't work out, we can still keep going. But I'll just turn this around for now. So is it? Okay, I did nice. Yeah, I'll start right now, but we're going to try to get the projector fixed in the meantime. But I can go through the agenda first of today, even if we can't see the slides right now, because you don't need to see that much of the agenda. So first we're going to start off with an introduction. I'll tell you about who I am, what I usually do to write and publish, what was my journey, and how it could apply to you. After that, that includes my background and my books. And then after that, since we have people from several different age groups over here, I'm trying to cover everything so that everybody can learn something that's helpful to them specifically. So we'll talk about learning languages, how I learned Chinese and English, and how that applies to my writing. And after that, how to write in these respective languages. Afterwards, we will also talk about illustrating and, of course, publishing. After that, we have a short Q&A session where if you have any questions, you are free to ask them. So one of the first things that people commonly ask when they think about this session is, why do I need to publish a book? It's not really something that you think about doing in your everyday life. Like, if you get up and feel good one day, you're going to be like, oh, I want to go outside, let's publish a book today. But why publish a book is one of the most common questions I get. It's a question I got by somebody who was looking at the flyer yesterday. And there are a couple reasons why you might want to publish or write a book. First of all is that I think it's a really, really nice way to document and share your story, whether it's fictional or something about yourself. It's really nice to have that kind of, concrete as a book. Something that's published, can be held in your hands, people can read it and buy it. I think that's something that's really valuable for any story that you have. And another thing is that you can record stages of growth in your life. I wrote a lot of books ever since when I was I think when I was 8, I wrote my first book. I didn't publish it, but I wrote my first one when I was 8. And I've been writing ever since, and up till now I've published a total of 5, and I have a lot more unpublished stories as well. So publishing is a really nice way to get your stories organized into these nice chapters of your life, I guess. So if you really like creating, illustrating, writing especially, then you should definitely consider this. It's really nice for advancing your hobby if you have one in writing or illustrating, and even if you want to, if you learned a new language and you want to learn to master it through writing, it's also really nice to be able to publish a book. What I like to tell people is that there is a progression, we call it learn, use, create, in that order. So first of all, you learn how to write and publish. After that, maybe you read some books, you find something that you really like in that book, and then you write something similar that's using what you learned. And after that, you create your own thing, which I think is what the final goal that we're all striving to get to at the end of this publishing journey. All right, so there is no projection right now, so we're going to use our imagination. Imagine there's a map on the screen right now. Oh my God, it asked me if I want to allow the app to make a change to inventories. I don't know if that means anything. But my background, I spent 14 years in China and 4 years in the US. So I came to the US for high school, and I mostly self-studied English, Chinese, and French on my own. So English and Chinese are both my native languages. French is lacking a little bit, but I'm getting there. And I think that this kind of language learning process is also going to be really helpful, since I know that a lot of, especially second gens, are maybe trying to learn another language or trying to master Chinese. So if that's something you want to do, this will also be very helpful to you. And it's very lucky that we have physical copies here, because I want to show you all my books. So I wrote a total of 6 so far, and I brought some of these with me today. One of these is A Journey to Perfect Teeth. This is one of the first books that I actually published, so I'm really proud of it. It's a story about my journey with braces. I know nobody likes braces, so I wrote a story about that and why it's important for you to have good dental hygiene. If you want to take a look at this book, you can pass it around. Just make sure to give it back at the end of the session, because I've had some people take my books. And another one I've written, this one was when I was 12. It's a poetry, or rather a limerick collection called Made For, and it's just 15, I believe, of the limericks that I wrote when I was young. So you guys can also pass this around if you'd like to take a look at it. And there are some other ones. There's Learn English with Cartoons, which is a collection of cartoons that I've posted online before, which I will also mention later in this session. So I'll just put them up here. If anybody's interested, you can come up and take a look. And the one that I worked the hardest on, probably up till now, is Dear Dad, which is a book that I wrote for my dad. So, if you love your dad, you can also take a look at this one. Yeah. And also, if you got the goodie bag, there's a copy of Dear Dad in there for everybody, so you probably already got a hardcover if you want to take a look at it. And this is An Alien's Guide to Friendship, which is actually a story that I co-wrote with some of my students who were taking a writing class with me a year ago. And these students are very young, maybe even younger than some of you here. Their ages range from, around 7 to 10, so they were all very, very young. And I think that the story turned out really great. So these are some of the books that I've published so far. And from my experience, it was a really, really easy process to get used to. So I'll be telling you all about it today. Oh, we have a new projector. We got everything swapped out. Hopefully this one works. But the first topic that we're going to tackle today is how to write. I know that a lot of people, maybe they want to write a story, but they don't really know what topic to pick. I can provide some insight over here. First thing we're going to talk about is obviously the learning of language. You need language to be able to write something. And this goes into my personal experience with learning language. So this will appeal to younger audiences if you are or if you have a younger child at home who's trying to learn languages at the moment. How to learn English, especially since I spent the majority of my life in China, so I wasn't raised in an English-speaking environment. I mainly practiced English through reading and writing a lot. Some of my favorite books were Falling Up by Shel Silverstein. That was what I read when I was like 11 or 12. The Giving Tree, also by Shel Silverstein. And Wonder by R.J. Palacio, and also the Percy Jackson series. Those were all books that I really, really liked when I was young. And I think one of the most important things in learning English is that you have to apply what you read to your writing. So when you're reading, consider, is there something that I really like from this paragraph, whether it's in the wording, the writing style, or something. Oh my God, it works! Let's go. Okay. All right, this is going to make a lot more sense now. But is there something specific about this book that you really liked, or even just a small piece of writing, a short story that you really enjoyed? So those are some of the books that I really enjoyed reading when I was younger. Maybe if you haven't checked them out yet, they really appeal to you as well. This is how I learned English. And as I mentioned earlier, I really like books written by Shel Silverstein. They're also big poetry or other limerick collections. So they're very humorous, very easy to read. And they were what inspired me to write these kind of short limericks that are included in Made For, that I wrote when I was around 12. I think the one on the right, I was really proud of it at the time. It's called Socks, and it's basically something that I wrote because I kept losing my socks and I refused to admit that it was me who was the problem. So I blamed it on the dryer, and I'll just read it quickly. You say you've lost your socks again, good Lord knows where they went. But I rather suspect, if you closely inspect, that the dryer has eaten them in the event. So I don't know, maybe some of you are like me, maybe you relate to this poem. But those are a lot of limericks that I wrote. It was a very young age. But reading Shel Silverstein, getting inspired by his poetry really helped me get started on writing like, these different genres. Right, and that's how they ended up in the book Made For. This was published last year, but I did write all the poems a couple years back. So, you know, if you have some stories that you prepared previously, you can learn to publish them in the matter of a few days or even weeks. A few weeks or even days. And learning Chinese, this might be more applicable to people who were born and raised in the US and maybe haven't had as much of a Chinese learning environment. One really important thing is, again, reading a lot. And when I was little, I used to read all of these books. My favorite one was probably 驴小弟变石头. It was a really cute picture book about a donkey who got turned into a rock. It doesn't have a whole lot of writing in there, but I really enjoyed the pictures, and it kind of helped me learn the Chinese language as well. But all of these books, some of them a series, they are really excellent, and I think that proficient reading is good at around 800 characters. And I also not only read, but I wrote a lot. I wrote over 700 blogs on Weibo in first grade. So whenever I thought of something, I'd write like, 3 or 4 sentences and post it on Weibo. Just anything that I thought of, whether it was something that happened today or a story that I randomly made up. But I wrote 2 every day and eventually ended up with over 700. And I think that's one thing that definitely helped me a lot, just endless practice. And from learning Chinese, it also inspired me to write this book, which is my newest publication. I actually just completed and published it on Amazon a few days ago. But this is called The Story of John Yu, and it's a really great book for beginners who want to learn Chinese. And a very special thing about this book is that it only uses 100 unique characters in the entire book. The book has around 700 characters, but there are only 100 unique ones. And these 100 characters are the 100 most commonly used characters in the entire Chinese language. And what's really cool is that even though you have, thousands upon thousands of characters in the language, these 100 make up over 40% of everything that you read. So for every 1,000 characters you read, around 400 will be with it, one of those 100 most frequently used characters. And I thought this would be really nice for beginners who want to learn the language and want to just get used to the most commonly used characters and be able to identify them when you're reading these other books. So this book is free to download on Amazon for today if you would like to check it out. But that was just something that was inspired when I was, learning Chinese and trying to figure out how this entire language worked. And next thing we'll talk about is how to illustrate. We already learned how to write with your language, practice, practice, practice. Now illustrating, it has a lot more to do with visual creativity. And hopefully you will end up with something more than this. I think most people know how to draw that. But or maybe it could be your own style, you never know. But I'm going to give you some tips on illustrating as well. So what helped me practice was entering my work into the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards every day. This includes writing as well, but there is a lot of art involved in it. On the left, you can see some of the stuff that I've drawn before. Some of them were, the top one was chalk on paper, the bottom one was digital. And I've never taken drawing classes before, so it was all kind of, exploration on my own. But I think a really good thing about the contest is that, when the deadline approaches every year, you start getting nervous and you're like, oh my God, I have to finish this. Whereas if you didn't have the contest, maybe you'll just drag it out and you'll never finish anything. At least I think that's a problem that I have. So, and of course, when the awards come out every year, if you found out that you won something, it's always a really big boost, at least to my own confidence. So I think that this is a great thing for everybody to try out. For older students, it's the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards are open to students from 8th grade to 12th grade, so all high school students plus the last year of middle school. You can submit to those awards. And if you're younger, the PBS Writers Contest is open up till students in 3rd grade. And actually, the first book that I mentioned I wrote when I was 8 years old, that was what I submitted to the PBS Writers Contest. So it was definitely kind of an introductory thing for me. And of course, illustration takes a lot of time as well. A Journey to Perfect Teeth, the book that I just mentioned, it took several years to finish. Of course, I wasn't working every day through these years. But you can see how the progression changes as I go on. The first one I drew in 2017 when I was in middle school, and then the middle one is kind of like work in progress. I got a new idea for the character, the style, what I was going to do, and then on the right you can see it's drastically different. So it could take a lot of drafts. I know that I dumped pretty much all the drawings that I've done from the years before and decided to start completely new. So it can be a non-linear process, but illustration does take a lot of time, but as long as you draw and practice, you will be able to get something that you end up liking. And this definitely took a really long time for me to actually like what I drew. As you can see, at the beginning, at least I think my finished products ended up looking a lot nicer than what I had in the beginning. The lines are cleaner, the colors are nicer. My own opinion, of course, but it takes a lot of time to perfect, and I hope that through this process, all of you can eventually end up with something that you really like. And there are a few different applications that you can use to make your illustrations if you do like drawing yourself. So for Journey to Perfect Teeth, you can see that the lines are clearer, it's more of a cartoon style. I drew this in an app called Medibang, which is, you can find it on the App Store or you can download it on your computer. It's available on pretty much every platform, but I did this with an iPad and Apple Pencil, and Medibang is completely free. It allows you to use like more cartoony styles. And for Dear Dad, I illustrated in more of a watercolor style. This one, I did all the illustrations in Procreate, where you have more color and brush options. So it really depends on what style you want. Procreate is $10, but personally, I think it gives me more versatility for the style. So Procreate and Medibang, these are two applications that you can use to illustrate if you do like drawing yourself. And again, I think both of these are good. It just really depends on what style you're going for. All right, next thing we will talk about is how to publish, which is where a lot of people get stuck. I ran a publishing workshop last month, and a lot of people, or a lot of students, they had a blast writing and illustrating their story, and when they got to the part where they were finally about to publish, they got stuck. Like, oh my god, this website looks so confusing, I don't know what to do. So I will give you the simplest walkthrough of this entire process that I can. So if you want to publish your book, assuming that you have your illustrations and writing now, you know what you want to publish. The first thing you have to do is set up an account at kdp.amazon.com. This is the website that you can publish through Amazon. So all the books that you publish through KDP, which stands for Kindle Direct Publishing, they will be available on Amazon and people will be able to buy them there. So you first set up your account. That's pretty simple, just email, password. And after that, you will fill in your book information. This is available over here on the left. You can see maybe the text is a little bit small, but the first thing you have to fill in is language. So what language are you writing this in? Or if you have translated versions, what primary language? So over here, you usually have English. And then you have the book title. You can also have the subtitle, like a very cool book subtitle, the book that is very cool, I don't know. But you will have these two options for your book title, and after that there are a lot of other categories that have to fill out for your book as well. For example, what category do you want your book to be in? If you wrote a poetry book, you want it to be in poetry. If you wrote a children's book, you want it to be in juvenile. And there are other divisions in your juvenile as well, like is it adventure, is it mystery, is it something else? And picking the right category will really help people find your book if they want to search something up. Like, for example, somebody goes on Amazon and searches bedtime story, good for kids, includes dinosaurs, or something. And if your book happens to meet those criteria and you put the correct categories in, they will be more likely to find your book. And also, categories are really good for getting on leaderboards. So several of my books were on the #1 best-selling on their leaderboards in their respective categories, which obviously, they divide these different categories so that, it's not like one big ranking list. But yeah, again, it depends on what category you think fits your book best. And something similar to that is keywords. So keywords you define yourself, whereas categories, they give you a list to pick from. But keywords are, words that you think define your book. So I could put in, for example, if I wanted to talk about the story of John Yu, which is for kids to learn Chinese, right? I could put down the keywords of foreign language, or learning Chinese, or toddler, baby, language learning, stuff like that. Those are keywords that people are likely to search for when they're looking for some book that's of that topic on Amazon. And again, picking the best keywords will help you have a better chance of getting discovered by readers. And there are a total of 7 keywords that you can put in for KDP on Amazon. Right, and the next thing, after you finish all of these steps, so filling in the information for your book, you have to select your format. There are 3 formats currently available on Amazon, although I would recommend only picking ebook or paperback because hardcover is still in beta, so they're figuring it out. Ebook is pretty simple. You can upload a digital file, so usually a PDF file or an EPUB, which is another format for ebooks, onto the KDP basically publishing form that you have to do. You upload the PDF file, and that's pretty much it. It will end up looking exactly like that file because it's digital. For paperback, it's a bit more complicated because you have to select the size of your book. There are a couple really common sizes. So there's 8.5 by 8.5 inches. If you have the English version of Dear Dad with you, that's 8.5 by 8.5. So you have an idea what that looks like. The translated version, since there's Chinese, this is 8.5 by 11. So it's a little bit bigger. And Learn English with Cartoons, it's a smaller, kind of like pamphlet almost. This is 6 by 9. So these are some of the more common dimensions that you can use for your book if you, depending on like how big you want your text or your illustrations to be. So just pick a common trim size, and one thing that you have to worry about is bleed. So bleed is a little extra bit on the edges of your book that they eventually trim off. So when they're printing your book, they would trim a little bit off the edge. That's called the bleed. And you have to add this bleed beforehand so important stuff on your book doesn't end up getting trimmed off. So that bleed is going to be 1/8 of an inch on 3 sides of your book that's not the spine. So you would have to, when you're uploading your file, you would have to add an extra 1/8 of an inch on these 3 sides. So your height would be 1/4 of an inch taller than the book is actually supposed to be, and the width would be 1/8 of an inch wider, if that makes sense. And of course, you won't be able to put important stuff like text or important illustrations in that area. That is just something that you have to figure out while you are preparing the file to publish, otherwise it will give you an error. So that's just probably the most complicated and most frustrating part that I had to deal with when I was publishing my first book, because the stuff kept getting trimmed off. And the last part is just picking what finish you want for your book. You could pick matte or gloss. It's really just up to your own preference. And then finally, you will have to create your cover and interior files. So you would ideally do your illustrations digitally and put it in a PDF file along with the text. And then after that, you will have upload the PDF file completely to and then KDP will automatically check for errors for you. And if there are no errors, as I mentioned before, your bleed looks fine, there are no spelling errors, etc. You can expect for it to show up on Amazon after either within 1 day or 3 to 4 days, but usually it's pretty quick. Right, so that's publishing on Amazon. Over here you can see making the cover file can be a pretty big hassle. On the left, here's what I mentioned about bleed earlier. So you can, for your cover file, you can go to kdp.amazon.com/cover calculator. That's where they give you a form for you to input the dimensions of your book, how many pages, so they calculate how thick your spine has to be, which is this middle part. And they will give you something that looks like this. So all you have to do is match your cover images to the template, and the blue areas are the bleed areas, so you make sure that nothing is crossing over to the area where it might get trimmed off, and it will put the barcode on there for you as well. So just following that template, you will be able to make your cover file, which ends up looking something like this. So this was the cover file that I uploaded for Journey to Perfect Teeth, and when you upload that to KDP, it would automatically convert it to something that can be printed into a physical book. Of course, this is only a problem if you are considering printing a physical copy. If you're uploading an ebook, all you have to upload is the front cover, there's no back cover needed. So it's a lot simpler and you don't need to worry about bleed either. So that could be something that you do for, maybe if you're just starting out with publishing and you want to try it out first to see if everything works, in case paperback or hardcover is too complicated. And here are some other options that you can use instead of KDP. So KDP is Amazon only, which means that if you publish your book for free through KDP, it's only going to be discoverable on Amazon, which is satisfactory for most people, but maybe for some you want to expand to a larger audience. Then I would suggest you use Ingram Spark, which is a different service that also publishes your book, and they do have the hardcover option. And they will be able to connect your book to libraries and bookstores. I did publish some of my books through Ingram Spark instead of KDP, and my books ended up on the Barnes & Noble website, and they're also discoverable by indie bookstores in your area or all over the country. And I was also able to donate some books to my local library. So Ingram Spark is really nice if you want to get this larger audience. And a slightly different one is called Lulu, which is really nice for making, I think, yearbooks and photo albums, since they have some really great quality printing and paper. So if you want to, design a yearbook or a photo album for your family, then you can create a cover. These are some examples of covers that I randomly created. And same thing, you upload the cover and interior just like you would a normal book, and they will send you a book, with all the images in there, just like it's a photo album. So these are two other options if you would like to use something that's not KDP or have other more versatile options. And then finally, publicizing your book. The one that I would recommend the most is sharing it online. I do have a WeChat blog where I originally posted a lot of comics. So on the left, I did a lot of these kind of little drawings that depict the literal meaning of English idioms, and then I explain what they mean, their origins, how they're translated into Chinese. So it's kind of a cool language learning thing that I did for a while on my blog. And on the right, these are comics that are more STEM related. So if you've taken calculus or if you're a chemist, you can probably understand these better. But I did do a lot of these comics on my WeChat blog and eventually gained a larger following before I started to talk about the process of creating and publishing books as well. So if you want more people to learn about your work or your creation process, then I think getting something like a WeChat blog or an Instagram account would be really nice for just getting it out into a larger audience. And of course, everything goes slowly. I showed you earlier the progression of A Journey to Perfect Teeth. Even though my books look nice right now, at the beginning I had a lot of trouble doing illustrations and writing stories. These are some of the pages from the first book that I ever wrote at age 8. The illustrations are horrible, the story wasn't that good, but it was somewhere to start, and I think it was really meaningful for me because I spent a really long time creating this book, and I was really proud of it when I finished, even though it wasn't that good. So if you are a younger audience, or if you have a younger child at home who wants to publish, it doesn't have to be all perfect or professional looking at the beginning. All you have to do is, get it published. And when you receive that physical copy, I know for one that when I receive one of my own books, I feel so accomplished every time, no matter what it is that I publish. All right, and for our last things, there are some bonuses that I want to talk about. If you don't like illustrating by yourself, I know that drawing isn't for everybody. You can use Canva. There are lots of free templates and graphics, and these cool photos that I randomly found on Canva. And it's really nice if you don't like to design by yourself or illustrate. And I actually wrote the slides in Canva. I didn't design any of this. I just put in the text, and it ended up looking really nice. So Canva, and by the way, it's completely free and royalty free as well. So you can consider using some of these elements from Canva if you don't like illustrating completely by yourself. Another thing is that you can use AI-generated art. This is also available in Canva. If you go to apps and text to image, they will have a text box where you can put in whatever prompt you want it to generate for you. Like over here, panda surfing wave, then the AI will generate an image of a panda surfing wave automatically for you. And you can refresh as many times as you want, or make the prompts more detailed to get exactly what you want from the illustration. So I think this is really nice for people who don't want to illustrate too much on it. Alright, and the last thing I mentioned, this is a very quick session. I know, and I skipped over a lot of super detailed stuff. So I do have, if you're really interested in publishing and writing, I do have a workshop. It's called the print workshop that I just finished teaching first, the first sessions to last month. And there are 8 sessions in total. It's, each session is 90 minutes. And if you're really interested in writing, illustrating, and publishing your entire book, like the entire very detailed process, where I walk you through the entire thing and you end up with your own book at the end of the workshop, then the next occasion of this workshop happens in mid-August. So if you want updates, you can go follow my personal blog. So that would be English with Ellen on WeChat, where I post updates about it. And you can also check out my Amazon author profile, Ellen Pan. If you want to look at some of my books in more detail, all of my ebooks are free for today only. PSD, so you actually have until 3 a.m. tomorrow if you're on the East Coast. But all of these books, feel free to download them, take a look, leave a review if you like it, and I hope you have a great time publishing and writing your own books.
Okay, thank you, Ellen, and that was a very inspirational and informative talk. I hope sorry about the microphone. I hope the audience enjoyed the talk, whether or not you are an aspiring author. So we have 2 minutes for book Q&A. We'll try to fit at least one question in this. Does anyone in the crowd have a question? Yes. So how do you get the ideas to publish the book?
The ideas for writing, I think most of my ideas came from really mundane things. Like I wrote a book for my dad because I love my dad. And I actually wrote A Journey to Perfect Teeth purely because I had braces at the time. I was in 7th grade and I just got braces and really hurt and I hated it. So I was like, what if everybody else hates braces as much as I do? And maybe I'll write an informational book for younger kids on why you need to take good care of your teeth and why it's necessary to have braces even though you hate them. So that's, really mundane thing in my life that normally you wouldn't consider to be that important. But I decided, if you can make a story out of it, you can eventually shape it into a whole story. And I think that's really the inspiration for me, for most of my books.
Thank you, Alan. Our next talk will actually start in 2 minutes, so we will have to have this room emptied out. Thanks again for everyone to come. And if you have more questions, I think Alan would be happy to talk.
I'll still be here, so if you have more questions, or if you want me to sign your